Okay, it's about 3 minutes after 11. We'll go ahead and kick this off, and hopefully have a few more join us as we go through this webinar. I'm Donnie Hasseltine. I'm the CEO of Packagecloud, and with me today, I've got Khor, our CTO at Packagecloud. Now, if you have reached out to us before and either wanted help automating your scripts or had a technical question, or perhaps reach out to us and talk to us on when you were initially coming onto the product, you may have met Khor. He's been a he's been really the anchor of Packagecloud on the tech side for several years now. But we wanted to kind of put him front and center in this webinar and kind of give him a chance to talk a little about his experience on package management. Now, if you're an experienced user of packages and are used to using Packagecloud, some of this is going to be either intro or refresher. But what we've seen is kind of different groups. We have some folks that are super technical that jump on a Packagecloud and are literally off to the races and running, pushing packages from the command line, really with no effort or requirement or help from us required. We love to see that. That's one of the things that's beautiful at the product is how easy and smoothly it works for developers and engineers. But we also have some who are new to package management and want to know how it works or how they can take their individual projects to move on. And we also work a lot with the open source community to try to help them get their software masterpieces out to the world. And Khor's really been instrumental in that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off to Khor right now and talk a little bit about starting out with what packages are, how we use them, what kind of operating systems work, and then kind of walk through like how you choose a package manager, why you would choose one over the other. And then at the end, we'll come back, talk a little about software supply chain security, and then open it up to Q&A. So Sophie, if you can go ahead and roll the next slide, and I'll hand it off to Khor.
Thank you, Donnie, for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'll get started. So software packages to us can be broadly categorized into programming, operating system, and others. Next slide, please, Sophie. Right. And under programming packages, we have what we call development libraries. Now, software engineers do not develop things from scratch. They rely on existing code that have been written by other people and which are usually packaged into like programming packages. Sometimes these development libraries are also packaged as operating system packages. And the reason being, this development library sometimes require a very specific version of a certain file in an operating system. And by packaging development libraries as operating system packages instead of programming packages, it ensures that the development libraries, when installed, has access to that particular version of the file in the operating system. Other operating system packages includes those for end users, for instance, like chat software, like Slack, or they can also include like server software, for instance, software that powers your infrastructure, like maybe RabbitMQ. And then in the last category are sort of what we consider like new kind of packages that are sort of approaching, like container images. They are a form of packages, and that's how we treat them. And there's also like configuration packages, which sort of defines the whole service that you're deploying. Next slide, please, Sophie. But despite all the differences between all the different packages, all of them have one thing in common, which is all of them have package managers. And the package managers does the same thing. The package manager basically is responsible for installing the packages, removing those packages, and also managing the dependencies of all the packages. However, despite being the same, the package managers basically deal with these different packages, which are in different formats. And these packages also specify dependencies in different ways and things like that. As a result, each of the package managers actually rely on a different kind of API set. And for a software repository system like Packagecloud, in order to support all these different packages, we actually have to implement all the different API specifications required for each and every package manager.
Hey, Khor. So with that, I think the big question with that start we always get is, okay, well, is this for me? Is this kind of product where I'm managing a bunch of different things, the right thing for me? So let's talk a little bit about whether building software packages is right for you, and then maybe do some real world examples on how this actually works in real life.
Yeah, that's a great question, Donnie. Next slide, please, Sophie. Thank you. So the big question is now that, like, is building software packages for you? Now, for 90% of us, I guess, and it was like around maybe after 5 years of working in software, I finally worked for a company that actually use software packages. The reason why not everybody, or rather software packages is not for everyone, is because primarily it actually increases the complexity of your setup. It also increases your development cycle. It also increases the skill set of the people that you require. Because instead of just writing code, now you have to write it, you have to package it, and then after that you install it before your system can actually use it. Now, if you need to make a change, you have to go through the entire whole process again. So as a result, you can understand why it is not for everyone. But yet, it is highly critical in certain circumstances. Here are some of the circumstances where they are super important. Number one is if you actually have to sell your software or you're trying to get people to adopt your software. And why is that? It's because packages actually simplifies the install experience, which is like really critical for end users. And the second case is from the perspective of software engineers. When software engineers have to write, let's say, a code that powers a cloud service, and this cloud service has a lot of components, but yet these components have to use sort of similar codes, right? For instance, that these components may need to interact with each other using some sort of protocol. And this protocol needs to be implemented on each parts of the component. So this part of the code is actually sort of like repeated. And instead of like putting them in all the different components, you should like, they can be reused. So you should put them in a package them up, and then they can be reused. So that sort of keeps your code very clean and easy for maintenance. That's from a software engineering perspective. From the DevOps perspective, right? They have a different kind of view, which is basically like doing deployment becomes sort of faster and sort of more isolated, which is a good thing during deploy. And how is it that it can become faster? Because when you actually package your software, a lot of times you pre-build with your dependencies and things like that. As a result, by just installing one single package, you actually have all the dependencies, everything that you need to run your service. If you don't have a package, most of the time when you deploy something, it is when your deployment system will start pulling all the dependencies, which can be quite a lot, and that takes quite a lot of time. Now imagine if you are deploying to like 100 or thousands of nodes. Now that's going to take even longer. And if you think about it, it gets even worse. Let's say when your system actually tries to react or try to deploy more nodes in real time in reaction to, let's say, to scale up, right? To serve more requests. What would happen is that the deployment will happen, and then you'll be pulling in all these software dependencies in real time. The real danger is that if during scale up, one of the dependencies was taken off the internet, for instance, because maybe it was vulnerable, now the scale up will fail because it can't find the dependencies and things like that. So as a result, from a DevOps perspective, if you use packages, then it does make your deployment faster, and also it makes it isolated, right, from failures that we just described about dependencies. Next page, please, Sophie. Yeah. So what we have seen, like in real world use cases, that means what you have seen from how people use Packagecloud. Normally, we see a few patterns of how people are using it, and as it's already quite clear from the previous explanation that people use it for external use to distribute software to their customers and users, and also for internal use. And for external use itself, what we see is that like a lot of people use software package repository like Packagecloud to actually control download of private repositories. And we have quite a few customers in the robotics industry where they will deliver packages that is used to program the robots. And these are sort of like, it's not available for everyone. It's only available to those customers who have like subscribed to that program. We have also seen a lot of users in open source companies where they distribute software, right? And we have one of the companies, for instance, what they do is actually they distribute like security agents through Packagecloud. And anybody who installs the security agent, basically the agent itself can collaborate with other agents to determine whether like IP addresses are malicious, right? And then after that, they can create a blacklist dynamically. Next, please. And we have also seen some use cases where a cloud service, a subscription-based cloud service, right, will distribute agents that actually communicate to this cloud service to their end users. And one example will be like chat software like Slack. Another good example will be like monitoring agents that you need to install on your servers. Like for instance, that talks to the cloud service, like for instance, Datadog. And finally, internally, right, a lot of DevOps in big companies with very complex infrastructure use Packagecloud to actually for deployment. And the reason being the tool that we've already described is basically it makes deployment faster, more stable, and isolated from failure.
Khor, those are great examples. I think one of the next things that often comes up when we talk to potential customers and other people in this space is they talk about, okay, I now see internal and external ways I can use a package manager, but why not just use a free repository, right? There's free ones out there that I can use. There's also in some cases package managers that are serving up open source software, but then there's also private repositories or ones that are paid. So how do I manage it if I want to either use tokenized things or charge my customers or control it? And when can I just kind of get it up in the open to let anybody download it and manage from there? So maybe you can talk through that next. And then I think the other big thing that leads into is, okay, should I buy a package manager or should I just build my own? And I think those are the two big things that I think people who are either trying to manage a SaaS company or even just get a small project out, those are the big things they've got to determine next, right?
Yeah, Donnie, that's definitely interesting. Sophie, next slide, please. So one of the things is that, there are definitely free repositories out there and you can use them. However, free repositories, there are some restrictions. For instance, if you are like developing or you're creating packages that are basically development libraries that are publicly available, there are a lot of like programming language repositories where you can upload these libraries. Now, if you are creating like operating system packages, there are also free operating system repos which you can upload to. However, the restriction is like sort of stricter because a lot of operating systems, when they are created, they have a specific theme. Like for instance, some operating systems are created mainly for, let's say, low power devices. Now, in order to qualify to upload or sort of like store your package in those kind of repositories, you have to make sure that your package sort of satisfies the requirement of those operating system repositories. Now, if you don't fall into those two categories, there are still other alternatives because there are a lot of cloud service repositories like Packagecloud, where we welcome open source software packages, right? Because we want to help promote open source software. And even if you're not open source software, but if you're sort of like creating packages that you don't mind being public, that can be seen and being used by everyone, you can still use the freemium model in a lot of these cloud service repositories, as long as you don't exceed the storage and bandwidth usage that is enforced on the freemium model. And finally, if you don't really qualify for these two, then that's where you usually end up having to pay for your repositories. But that's not a bad thing, because with paid repositories, what you essentially get is that you can control access to your packages, who gets them, how they get it, right? And you can also create packages that is only for your own internal private use, which you don't want to be accessed by anyone else. And usually these paid repos are also more scalable, and they have like better download speed because they use things like CDN, content distribution network, to actually distribute the packages so that the end users, wherever they may be, will be able to download these packages from the server that's nearest to them. Next slide, please, Sophie. And touching on Donnie's, the other interesting question is like, okay, so now you have sort of determined that I can use a free repo, or I just need to subscribe to, I just need a paid one. So now there are a few alternatives as well if you decide to pay, because you can actually build one, right? Or you can just, you don't have to build it, you can also use some open source code and run one yourself. Now, I will just focus on when you should actually buy from a cloud service provider. It's like when you have very strict customer SLAs. In order to satisfy this SLA, it's always better to get from a cloud service provider, because these people live, eat, and breathe like package management. Normally, if you were to like sort of like build or like host your own package manager, the engineer will like spend a lot of time figuring out how to build it, and then after that it just runs, right? And then nobody needs to worry about it, which is great. But then suddenly when something breaks, most of the time we don't even remember who actually set this up, right? Because we don't, I mean, as people whose main business is like something else, but setting up this software repository is kind of like a temporary thing that you do, you often don't remember how it works. So in that case, that's why, like, if you have very strong customer SLAs, it is best to leave it to people who actually deal with package management every day. The other thing is like really super important that we actually touched on earlier is basically like, if you're delivering software to end users, it's very important to make sure that it's easy for them to install, right? Because end users, sometimes they give up very easily, partly because they are not experts on how to install software packages. And installing software packages, right, it's not really that easy if you think about it. There are actually quite a lot of steps that requires you to be rather technical about the system. And for instance, right, you have to actually like figure out, how do I download a key that is used to sign the software package repository metadata, so that you can verify that the package that you're going to download has not been tampered with, right? And the next thing after that you need to do, after you have done this installation of the key, you will have to actually connect your system to the repository, specifying what kind of OS you are looking for, OS packages that you're looking for, so that you can proceed to download the packages. So as you can see, someone who just is interested to use your package is quite unlikely to be familiar with all these steps. And that is why, if you are actually delivering a lot of software packages of different types, it is best to get such a service from like a cloud service provider, because they will have figured out how to make sure that an end user can install a package without having to think about all these things, and for all the different kinds of packages that you are actually delivering. And the other one is like basically like, if you do hundreds of deploys a day using packages, this just means that the software package repository is kind of critical to your company. If it's broken, then everything comes to a standstill. So again, in such a use case, it may be again best to like get it from a cloud service provider. And finally, these days, like more and more companies are becoming more security aware. because of the law, right? Whether it's internally, your security team will give you a checklist of the things that you have to satisfy, or if you are a vendor, your customers will often give you a checklist asking you what you need to say, whether you satisfy certain criteria, right? And the thing is that like there's a 3-letter word that actually makes filling in this questionnaire like really simple. And you know the 3-letter word is AWS, or if you're using Google, that's GCS, right? Because that actually helps you to fill in like 80% of the questionnaire. And so similarly, right, if you were to actually try to run software package registry, you will actually have to like fill in this thing yourself, right? Okay, people ask you, hey, you built this thing, you're maintaining it, is it secure, right? You have to fill in the checklist and things like that. Do you rotate your key? Do you make sure that the keys are not like stored in your database? They have to be encrypted before they're stored in the database. So all these kind of things, you don't have to worry about it, especially if you're a really security conscious company or your customers are really security conscious, because you can actually get software package repository that are sort of like security compliance, either because they have like some sort of like SOC 2 attestation or like some ISO certification.
Khor, I'm glad you ended with security. For those who know me, I've got a cybersecurity background. That's one of the things we try to focus on at Packagecloud. A couple of things that you brought up that I thought are super fascinating is really just the management of keys, right? It's one thing if you're managing that on their own, but we actually had a customer not too long ago come in, and one of the reasons why they came to us is they had been managing on their own, but then due to a change in personnel and a couple of things, they actually lost access to the keys, which shut down all their downloads. And when you can look in the Packagecloud docs and see how we manage the GPG keys for you and make it easy for you, it just really makes your life a lot easier because you don't want things to go down for that reason. The other point that Khor made is I think a lot of SaaS companies often rely on that very big thing. Look, we use a cloud service provider that has all of the checks and balances in there, like AWS, like Google, like Azure. The challenge, though, with those, you got to remember, is there's a shared responsibility model where they're going to handle pieces of that, but your software providers really got to also make sure they're doing the other pieces. And that's why it's really critical to do the due diligence on the backside. And we'll talk a little bit that on security and compliance at the very end of this webinar. But one thing to also note, and I encourage people to take a look at, is President Biden just released a new executive order on cybersecurity. It's very interesting. And one of the things it points out is that is to switch the accountability of damaged data. And normally it just falls on the customers that kind of eat the problem or eat the issue if something goes down. But really shifting the blame back onto to SaaS companies. So I think we're going to start seeing a pretty significant trend on people looking and really looking closely at who are the third-party providers we're using, how are we managing that, and how are we ensuring that if one of those doesn't go down, that doesn't have after effects that ripple out to our customers. And I think that's probably going to be one of the more critical reasons why package managers are important is, you know, you're not just buying the ability to deploy your packages, you're buying a dedicated team that they're 100% sole job is making sure this works properly, making sure it's compliant, make sure we have the security checks in place. So I think that's a really important piece to talk about. I'll toss back over to you because I know you're going to talk about common issues, repositories, and a little bit about how that software package lifecycle actually works in real life. And then the last thing we're going to give it a shot to is just see how fast we can get Packagecloud to push up a build and a deployment. Might take a little longer since we're going to narrate it, but I think the key thing is to show how using a Packagecloud package manager actually works and how it can really be seamless, especially when you go in the automation process. So I think we can jump to the next slide. I'll turn it back over to you, Khor.
Thanks, Donnie. Thanks for laying out the upcoming agenda. And you will get to hear from Donnie on the security viewpoints and things like that after the demo. So now you've sort of decided that, okay, I'm going to get a software package repository from a cloud provider. What do you need to look for? So it's actually not that complicated once you've decided you're going to get it. Because like the first thing you look for is like, what kind of packages are you delivering? And as long as the software package repository service supports these package types, then you'll be great. The next most important thing is, of course, something that we've touched on quite a lot is ease of use for your users, right? So I cannot emphasize how important this is if you're selling software, because your end users will not be able to install this on their own if the system is not easy. And we know that, right? Because the reason is that if you have ever visited our site, you'll notice that we actually have a chat, an interactive chat that you can talk to us about. Every day, we get a lot of questions on like, hey, this is not installing for me. Hey, I'm getting this error and things like that, right? And that's because like installing the package is actually, there are so many possibilities of failures, so many combinations of the operating system, of the environment that the user is using, that chances of something not working well is high, right? So that's why having a software package repository that actually makes it very easy for your end users to install packages is like super critical for your business to succeed. And then the next one is, of course, responsiveness of support, because as I've shared, right, and as you may have experienced before, even if you just go to some forum of like some software packages and things like that, you will see that there'll be a lot of sort of customers writing in on issues they face when they try to install something. And the great thing about it is like if you use software package repository in the cloud, like Packagecloud, is that all these questions, right, are being answered by us. So we sort of like offload your team from all these package management questions, right, so that you can deal and focus on your product. And we ensure that we respond to these questions very quickly, right, to make sure that customers can install the software when they need it. Now, the next group of people who are equally important are like your DevOps. So you already have your beloved CI/CD tools, you already have some deployment tools, etc. So when you choose a software package repository, it's best to choose one that can actually integrate quickly and flexibly with your CI/CD and also deployment tools. And of course, some of the things that we've already touched on is like, security compliance is important and download latency is important. And yeah, so, but for Packagecloud, Donnie will touch on it a bit more. All right, we are already SOC 2 attested. And then for download latency, we basically distribute software through Amazon's CloudFront, which is their content distribution network, ensuring that people get their packages from a server which is closest to them. Next, please, Sophie. Thank you. Yeah, so one of the things, I guess, like, we thought it's interesting to share, to hear maybe some of the comments and questions that we get from our customers, not only our customers, but potential customers and some people whom we have spoken to. Right, like some of the questions that we always get from people who are running their own system is that, hey, I uploaded some things, but it takes a while before it becomes visible and becomes like installable, right? And that could be because like you have too many packages in a single repository. Every time when you upload a package, the repository actually have to like re-index every single package that's sort of related, right? If you upload it for a certain OS version, then every package that's for that OS version needs to be re-indexed. So that's one of the reasons. And you'll be surprised, like, like the other day, I was talking to a customer. And do you know how many packages he actually had inside a single repo? He actually had like, I was really shocked. He has more than 1 million packages inside a single repo. And the repo actually, he was saying that, hey, it takes me like 3 minutes from the time the package being uploaded to the time the package being visible for install, it takes him 3 minutes. I was like, you have over 1 million packages. 3 minutes is like an amazing time. So yeah, we had a good laugh about that. And the other thing is that, like when you create a package, sometimes it's like OS version agnostic. You can use it on any OS versions. But before software package repositories become like really big, right? You will actually have to like upload this for every single version that you want to support, right? If you want to support 10 different versions of the OS, you actually have to upload it 10 times. So now, cloud repositories like Packagecloud enables you to just upload it once, and then it becomes available to like as many OS versions as you choose to, which makes it very easy. And the other one is like lost repository GPG keys is something which Donnie have shared with you. This is a true story. Yeah. And then the other thing is like disruptive migration. It's just basically sometimes, you use a lot of like the SaaS service that you use. After some time, you're kind of locked in and it's very hard for you to migrate away. It's very disruptive. Like for instance, if you're using Packagecloud, well, actually Packagecloud is not good example. Let's say, and I'll explain why. Let's say if you're using some package management service, right? And then you decided to move away. You can't just move away, right? Because when you move away, first you have to move all the packages, which is fine. It just involves effort on your end. But the bigger issue is that when you move those packages away to another repository, all your end users have to like reconfigure the systems to point to this new system, right? Because they have a different name. And also because now, unless you can somehow retrieve the private key that was used to sign the sort of like the metadata of all these packages from your existing provider, you will have to change the keys, which means that all your end users also have to change their keys, right? So it's very disruptive. That's why we talk about disruptive migration. And at Packagecloud, it's a bit different because we have a couple of services to help alleviate this issue if you want to move away from Packagecloud. First of all, when you use Packagecloud, you can actually opt for a custom domain name. So that means that instead of downloading things from packagecloud.io, you can actually download it from your own domain, which is within your own control. Like for instance, you can just give us a domain name like packages.mycompany.com. It's always within your control, right? When you decide to move away from Packagecloud, that name belongs to you. We don't control it. You can just move it away. Now,
but more importantly, if you're trying to come to Packagecloud, we can mirror that.
We can do that as well. Yeah.
I do got to say, Khor, I think that the point you made earlier, though, about 1 million packages in 3 minutes, that should be on our website because that's actually pretty darn good indexing. But the overall thing that I think is great about what you're saying is hopefully it shows that when customers have issues, when you're using a package manager, customers can come straight to you. We can help you solve those problems instead of you stopping what you're doing and then trying to figure it out on your own. I thought those were really kind of some great points you made.
Yeah. Thanks, Donnie. Yeah, so basically like custom domain is something that we provide, right? So that when you come to us, right, we can actually help you set up a custom domain very easily so that, the repository, even though it's hosted on Packagecloud, it actually sort of belongs to you because it has your name. If and whenever you decide to move away from Packagecloud, your customers will not notice it, right? Because you can move to somewhere else and you can still use the same domain. And in the same way, if you want your keys, we can give it to you, right? But of course, we believe that our service is great, that will not happen. Hopefully, right? And we are always very open, right? That's why we always have a chat where you can always come in and talk to us. And then we are more than happy to work with you on various different things, like from feature requests to helping you to solve the issues and things like that. And the other thing that we have sort of touched on is basically slow downloads, right? Because, well, some of our customers have this issue when they manage it on their own because they don't use any kind of like CDN to distribute their software, right? And finally, installation question is something that we have also touched on previously. There are so many ways an installation can fail. Therefore, having like clear installation instructions is important. And failing that, someone always there to handhold your end users when they are facing these installation questions is like really important. And yeah, we hope that this is useful because it is something that we have experienced and it's something that we like to share. Next slide, please, Sophie. Great. So now you've gotten your sort of like your cloud software package repository, which is great. So what do you do with it, right? And it's pretty simple. You write useful code, you create a package from it, usually using your CI/CD, and then using your CI/CD as well, you push it to Packagecloud. Packagecloud will hold it, and it allows you to distribute to any system, right? For instance, what usually happens is that if you're trying to deploy these packages internally, your server orchestration system, it can be Ansible, it can be Kubernetes, it can be Chef, Puppet, whatsoever, will pull this package from Packagecloud and then deploy it to the thousands of nodes, which is required to run your service. And that's how it works, right? And which is a segue to what we're going to show next, which is a demo. So what we're going to show you is basically, we're going to show you this entire whole process from creating a package, uploading to Packagecloud, to actually using it, right? And we want to, the whole purpose of it is to show you how easy it is to actually go through this whole process. And that's why the challenge is to go through it in 180 seconds, which is like 3 minutes, right? But there's give and take because we actually rely on a lot of things, right? Because the CI/CD, right, is running on the CI/CD that was chosen for this example is just basically GitHub Actions, because I believe that a lot of us have our code in GitHub. So maybe that's a good example to start with. So it really depends on how fast GitHub can run those steps. And also because like throughout this process, I'm going to be narrating. As a result, it may take a bit longer. So I would say expect maybe around 5 minutes. But if you were to do this without narration, I would think that you should be able to do it within 180 seconds or thereabouts. Okay, so I will start the demo. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. I'm guessing that y'all can see my screen, right?
We're still seeing Sophie's right now. Sophie, can you stop share and then see if Khor can share? There you go. Should be up now.
Okay, cool, great. So this is the Packagecloud website. So what I'm going to do is I will just click on Get Started. And I can just choose a username. I'll just choose today's date. And then after that, my email. Cloud.io. And then some complicated password. And Packagecloud has an onboarding process, right? When you sign up, it guides you through what the UI is like from creating a repo to uploading your first package. So in this case, it's just asking me to create a repo. So I will just call it hello. You can choose between a private or public repo. I was just going to choose public. And then I'll just create it. And then you just ask you that, hey, push a package, right? You can use a CLI, or you can push it from the web by dragging a package here. If you don't have a package, it will show you that, hey, you can try with these packages, right? But for this demo, I will not do this step. I will just create the repository. Okay, and this one, I'll skip it. It's asking for my credit card. And so the next step will be, I'm going to my GitHub account to create a code repository, which is where your code to actually for the package that you want to build is going to be. So I'll just call it by the same name. It's public, and then I just create the repository. And okay, the repository is ready. So all I need to do is just go to my terminal, and I'll start creating the code. I will just create and as mentioned, we're going to use GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions, the way GitHub Actions works is very simple. All it looks for is a certain file in a certain directory. And the directory that it looks for is just basically this one. Inside your directory will be just GitHub workflows And then once you do that, you can just create a file that has any name is fine, but it just needs to be YAML format. So now GitHub Action is just waiting for you to like key in what you want it to do. So remember, there are two things that we want to do. We want to create like a Debian package, and then after that, we want to push the Packagecloud. So there is this repo, it's publicly available. So it's just to build some Debian package, right, using GitHub Actions. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy everything here to build a package. And I'll go back to here. Okay, and then after that, this is to build the package. Now I want to push the package to Packagecloud. And if you go to our GitHub repositories, there are some examples on how to use GitHub Action. This is an example showing using GitHub Actions to create a Python package and then pushing it to Packagecloud. But today we're going to create like a Debian package. So the only thing that I need is just basically this part, which is to push the package to Packagecloud, as this one says, right? So all I need is just this part. And then I paste it here. And you can see that the instructions here, it says that, okay, I have to make some modifications, right? In this case, I'm not pushing Python packages. I'm pushing Debian packages. So I should just specify Debian, and my username that I just created. And my repository name, which I created earlier. And what kind of Debian package I want to push it to. What OS, what operating system version is it for? And in this case, it is just, I will just push it for Ubuntu. And then finally, you can see the last thing that required here is basically the Packagecloud token. And what is this Packagecloud token, right? So I'm going to save this. And then after that, I need to get the token, which is basically, if you go back to your Packagecloud account, you can just go to your API token, and I copy it, right? And I go back to GitHub, because I'm going to push the GitHub Actions file into GitHub, right? And it's going to pick up from the environment in GitHub. So I actually have to do the settings here. Just go to settings, go to secrets and variables, set the action, and need to my secret name. Oh, sorry. Okay, and then this one has to be Packagecloud token. Now I've added the secret. So if I go back here, so you can see it's going to pick up the secret from where I set it, right? I don't want to set it in here because it's insecure. So just set it in the GitHub repo itself. So I'm done here. And so all I need to do now is basically, sorry, this is blocking me. Just need to initialize my repository. And then after that, I need to connect this to this particular repository. I need to connect my code to this repository, right? And I'll just take this instruction here to do the connection. And I'm good there. So I'm just going to add the file. Just going to call it v0.1. I'm going to add the file. And then after that, I'm just going to push it. Right. And the GitHub action, actually, what it is looking for is that, like, it's looking for the version that I'm asking it to create, right? So in order to create the version, I just create a tag, a GitHub tag, saying that, okay, what version this is. Okay. And then I just leave a message, which is just the same thing. And then finally, I just push the tag that I just created, which is this one. Okay, if everything goes well, now if I come back here, I should go back here. Right, so now you can see the file that I created is already inside the repository. Okay, exactly what we wanted. And then if I go to actions, you can see the GitHub action has really triggered something, right? Because it just looks at the file that I create and see what the file asks it to do. So if I click on this one, you can see the details of what it's trying to do. So now it's like creating the Debian, right? You can see here, it's building the Debian package, right? And then currently it's pulling the GitHub actions to actually push Packagecloud. So it's like trying to retrieve the GitHub action. And this will take, I don't know, just a minute or so. So it's done. So it's going very fast, right? So basically, just to summarize, oh, so this part, right, is failing. Let's see why. Okay, I misspelled it here, right? So I need to fix this. So it's going to take more than 180 seconds now. My apologies for the misspell.
I think that's still pretty fast, and given that if that's the only thing, Khor, that's pretty awesome.
Okay.
I think also a lot of times when this happens, the package is already made, right? You already have the software you built, so it's just getting it up to the package manager.
Yeah. So you can see actually the mistake I made was, well, I just typoed here, right? It should be just that. So you can't find the package. So I fixed it, and then I add it back again. Well, okay, commit it again. I can call it a different version if I want to. Chat. Okay, so if I go back there again, okay, look at the. So now it's building the 002, which is the new version. And if I look at this one, it's going through the same process. Great. So it's completed everything, right? So now if I go to, if I go back to here and I go back to my Packagecloud repository, and you can see it says the last push is a minute ago, right? And if you go inside, you can see the package that push, which is sample script. If you go inside, and sorry, you can see that it's basically for Ubuntu Focal, which is what I want to push for. And if you go inside, and this is what your customers will see, right? All these instructions to install, which you can see is just these two steps, is actually automatically created by Packagecloud. And when your end users come to download this package or install it, all they need to do is just follow these two simple steps. And I'll just take you through very quickly.
And Khor, let's also show them that you can just also do a single click download if that's what they desire to.
Right, you can also do that, right? Because as Donnie pointed out, yeah, there's a button at the top here. You can just click on it and then you just download the package as well, right? So I'm going to just do this, right? If you're an end user, if you have Debian, Ubuntu Focal, all you need to do is just copy the script, right? Come over here. And I'm inside, because here you can see I just started my Ubuntu Focal, right? So now this is Ubuntu Focal. Before that, I need to do an update of the environment. And then after that, I do need to install a tool called curl, which basically all it does is capable of getting something from the internet, right? And what it's going to get is basically the script that is on Packagecloud to actually install the keys that's required to do the verification and also other configuration that's required to configure the system to point to Packagecloud, right? So basically, I just copied this from there and then I just run it. So you can see some of the steps like installing the GPG verification here. And then if I go back here, I just copy this second step, which is just to install the package. And say it's ready, right? And before I do the install, I want to show you that actually, if I try to run this, it doesn't work, right? Some script does not exist because I've not installed it. I've just configured the system to actually connect to Packagecloud so that it knows where to pick up packages. And now if I do a apt-get install, right, you can see it's going to pull the package automatically. And then after that, you will just install it.
Thanks, Khor. I think that was a great rundown on how Packagecloud works and how to get quickly deliver packages. And I think what I love about this is, once you have your package, your GitHub Actions set up, we had to do all that from scratch in this demo today, but usually that's already going to be existent. And when that's already working and running, you can sit in its command line and pull that stuff and start firing away and get things uploaded and up and running for your customers almost instantaneously. And again, unless you have a million packages in that repository, it's going to be uploaded very quick, indexed very quick, and then available to all your customers through AWS to CDN network almost instantaneously.
Right.
So I
and
appreciate
here you can
that.
see,
Go ahead.
sorry, so you can see the package has be installed. Yeah, I'm sorry it took a bit more time because of my typo and also the narration. Apologies. I'll hand the floor back to Donnie so that Donnie can cover the rest of the.
Yeah, no, thanks. So I know we're getting close on time. So Sophie, maybe if you can just bring up the slides and jump to slide 14, and then I'll just do a quick finish up to make sure we have a couple minutes for questions. Okay, thanks. And I'm just going to cover up a couple things now. If you looked at what Khor just did, he went through this entire software supply chain really in just a couple of minutes. But it's important to understand those big blocks because it helps us understand where there's vulnerabilities to this. And again, this could be a webinar in of itself. Maybe we'll do this upcoming there. But when you talk about source, that's the source code that's held in GitHub that Khor created there. Then when you go into the building process, you saw him use GitHub Actions and walk through the building that package. In this case, there weren't really any dependencies he had to pull, but in many cases, you will have a lot of dependencies that will get pulled in and integrated in that CI/CD process, and then ultimately get pushed to that package manager on the deployment side. For anyone to use software, this process has to take place. And I think we hear a lot of people talk about the software supply chain, and this is the software supply chain. We like to add another word on that, and that's integrity. And obviously, it's part of the confidentiality, integrity, availability triad of cybersecurity, which means, can you go through this process with ensuring that what you put into your software is what you intended it, and no one else can change it or modify it or damage it? Go to the next slide, Sophie. So I think a lot of times, okay, one more. It's not advancing, I don't think.
We're having a bit of technical challenge. So just a second, please.
I can share if you want.
Yeah, the next slide. Let me see if I can just do it, Sophie, because we're really getting close on time. So can everybody see my screen right now?
Oh, I'm sharing, right? Sorry.
Okay.
I'll let you share. Good, Donnie.
Yeah, got it. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So if you look at what's in red, these are some of the things that these are actual legitimate attacks that have occurred on the software supply chain, right? So when you talk about how you manage that, when you choose a package manager, when you talk about where you store the store your source code, and also how do you work that build process, you've got to think of like, do I have a secure build platform? Do I have a secure package repository? Is my source control secured in a way that makes sense? And I think a lot of times we get caught up in the little blocks here and focus too hard on that individual thing instead of stepping out and looking at software across that entire chain, right? Because it doesn't matter if you're using a really secure password manager or package manager if there's a problem with your source control or your build platform, and vice versa. So instead of just thinking about software supply chain security, I kind of encourage people to start thinking about software supply chain integrity and thinking of it as, how do I ensure that integrity across the entire process? Again, we almost do an entire webinar on every little thing that's in there in red, so I'm not going to belabor that, but I want you to just have that image in your mind as you think about what Khor talked about moving forward. So finishing up here, I'm just going to talk about a couple quick things because we're right up on time. One, it's that point of software supply chain integrity. Keep an eye out for our white paper on software supply chain integrity. We'll be pushing out here in the next week or so. We'll make it available to everyone who signed up for this webinar, and we'll have an ability to get it on our website. As Khor mentioned, you've got to make sure that if you're going to use a package manager, have they done the due diligence with their cloud service provider's shared responsibility model to make sure that your software is safe and your customers are safe. We have taken those steps. We're SOC 2 Type 1 tested as of February 2023. Happy to share that report to customers. And then the last thing is when you take a look at that software supply chain thing, one of the things we've been working with customers on is thinking about ways we can mirror and proxy dependencies, as well as do some code ancestry work to look back and look at some of those dependencies to identify where there might be issues in that code. If you want to see more about that or talk to us a little bit or give us feedback, please reach out to Khor and I, or reach out to us at support@packagecloud.io, and we're happy to do that. And so if you can go to the next slide, actually, I'll go to the next slide here. These are ways you can reach out to us, and yeah, we look forward to hearing more from each of you guys out there. I think, let me just take a quick look. Someone said, great demo. I think I saw one question pop up. Chris just posted that, and I know we're at time. We'll stick around online for those of you who want to hang out for a moment and ask any questions, and happy to have Khor and I stick on for a few more minutes. But thanks so much for joining us, and appreciate you all listening in. We'll keep everything open for a couple minutes here if anybody wants to ask any questions. I'll go ahead and stop share and just come back to the main screen. And I think we're good. So thanks, everyone. I appreciate your time today, and reach out if we can be of service to you guys at Packagecloud. Thanks so much, and have a great week.